So the talks are continuing in Brussels at the moment, as we know. Whatever David Cameron comes back with is kind of immaterial to you. You want to leave whatever he renegotiates. But meanwhile, the campaign for leaving is fairly split. Bring us the latest on what you're doing to try and bring some kind of consensus to the issue.
Yeah, I mean, on that, we've written 4 letters to Vote Leave. We've had several meetings with them, and they just don't want to merge. And I think what's actually happened now is that we've had an organisation called Go, which is represented by Conservative MPs. It's backed by UKIP. There's Labour MPs. We're in chats with trade unions, and our organisation has basically agreed to back this one for designation. We represent something like 500,000 people, and we think this is the best way to break the deadlock.
You're going to back the Go campaign?
Yes, that's right.
OK, so but just kind of explain to our viewers, Go are part of Vote Leave, aren't they? Kind of a splinter group.
Go is an umbrella organisation which tries to bring everybody into one kind of campaign. It was set up by 2 Conservative MPs, Peter Bone and Tom Pursglove, and the strategy really is to get everyone to come in underneath it, which is pretty much what has happened apart from Vote Leave, which increasingly is a kind of the official campaign of the Conservative Party. We're hopeful in the end they will see sense and come underneath it.
Because if they don't, there's going to be problems, because if you can't campaign together, you're going to lose momentum, aren't you?
Well, there is a fundamental difference between our approach. I mean, we've got a survey coming out at the weekend in one of the big national newspapers that effectively shows that immigration is the largest concern for the British public, and that's even amongst the undecided voters. So by a margin of something like 3 to 1, it's the biggest concern. Vote Leave don't want to talk about it. They want to focus on the kind of, bringing back the powers to Parliament, which is very important. But we think that immigration is the single biggest issue.
But the Electoral Commission will choose an official kind of opposition party, won't they? Or group?
Sorry, just repeat the question.
The Electoral Commission will choose a kind of official opposition to the Remain in the UK campaign, in the EU rather.
That's
campaign.
right. They'll do that probably in 3 or 4 weeks' time. But as I said, I don't think there will be a designation battle, because increasingly Go is the kind of entity I think that will go forward and win the designation. It's got all the cross-party support, and our campaign is non-political. We started out not to be political right at the very beginning, but we think this is the right approach to back them for designation.
Who should be the face of the campaign?
I think it should be someone like Kate Hoey, funnily enough, because I think she's an excellent spokesman. She obviously comes from the left side of the equation, and I think, to be honest, we don't want this to be dominated by lots of big Tory beasts like Boris, if he does come out, or other people. I think it's the left that we need to energise and to win this win the referendum.
The Daily Telegraph have released a survey that they've discovered. They think that 80 of the 100 FTSE 100 companies are actually going to vote to stay in, or certainly campaign to stay in the EU. How, if at all, does that affect your campaign?
Well, we've got about 4,000 small businesses that are backing us, and I think this is the big divide, really, between maybe entrepreneurs and big corporate companies. These are companies that have avoided their taxes in a lot of ways, corporation tax, using the European Commission or the European Union structure, and I think they represent interests that love big regulation. So effectively, the EU is all about big banks, big regulation, big politics. And of course, they would support staying in.
When we hear from David Cameron eventually at the end of this marathon session of talks, if he comes back to the UK with a deal and he holds that emergency cabinet meeting tomorrow, we're going to definitively know, aren't we, whether some of the big beasts of the Tory party, the likes of Boris Johnson, Chris Grayling, what they're going to do if we expect Chris Grayling to vote to leave the EU. When that happens, how much of a boost are you hoping for with your campaign when you actually see some politicians that are part of the Conservative Party, some well-known names, come on board?
I think this referendum isn't just about politicians, it's about the people. You get a referendum when the politicians have failed, really, and so it's a vote that's going to the people. I think it's important, but they shouldn't be the only voices. As an example, next week we'll be launching a initiative we did a few weeks ago, where we've signed up 1,000 healthcare professionals into the campaign. We increasingly want to hear from normal people and the public rather than just politicians.
I just want to ask you about the timing of the referendum. If a deal is put on the table today or tomorrow over the weekend, then we're expecting a referendum June the 23rd. If it isn't, then it's going to be pushed back to some point in the future. How significant is that for your campaign? I'm sure you've done polling and you'll have figured out the sooner, is it the better for you or worse for you?
No, I think it's the longer the better. The crisis in the Eurozone is deteriorating. The migration issue is becoming a big issue. I mean, if you look at the things Cameron is asking for, you mentioned, I think, the child benefits. That amounts to something like £30 million a year. You know, we've spent that on the European Union by this time, you know, at lunchtime. You know, it's a tiny factor in the whole equation. So the real drivers behind this are the immigration worries that are starting to creep up into the public's perception. I think the reason he will get the deal today and go for an early referendum is because he wants to get it out of the way before things deteriorate.
We'll see what happens in the next few hours. Aaron Banks, thank you.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.